It has been 22 years since the first Ratchet and Clank video game came out. I enjoyed the video games that have come out since 2002, although I have not played any of the games past Ratchet Deadlocked, and although I may not have played all the games, the series has been one that I've enjoyed, and because they got their start at around the same time as the Jak and Daxter series, as well as the Sly Cooper series, I have a certain nostalgia and fondness for the Ratchet and Clank franchise games because of all that. But for this movie, I do not. After seeing this, I am ambivalent towards Ratchet and Clank the movie. This is the best terrible movie I've ever seen. Allow me to explain. It made me chuckle, but it didn't make me laugh hysterically. It was well written in some areas, and shoddily written in others. It had some great looking shots and really good direction in some areas, but in others, I just know it could have been done a hell of a lot better. In the video games, Ratchet and Clank had tons of hilarious jokes, some really funny characters, and the story, while not great, was good enough for a video game franchise. Because you don't need to make a game on the same level as Citizen Kane in terms of writing. But Ratchet and Clank as a movie just felt like it wasn't really that funny. I think that the video game series is hilarious because it was a franchise that separated itself by just barely getting by with its T for T rating, and while it doesn't cross the line, the subtext of the jokes are very obvious. Because usually right when someone is about to say a cuss word like ass or shit, in the video games somebody does something that cuts them off from actually saying the word, and that's one of the hilarious things about Ratchet and Clank the video game series. But in the movie it doesn't feel like they were really doing anything that was all that funny. And even if it was funny, it only made me chuckle, and I don't even remember any of the jokes from the movie other than the texting scene and the part where Captain Quark was updating his Instagram with his heroic deeds. Now keep this in mind. The video game series came out before cell phones were used by everybody, and Instagram didn't even exist back then. So in their attempt to modernize Ratchet and Clank, it bogged the movie down, and the execution of the jokes were not as good as they could have been. Which brings me to my next complaint. It was well written in some ways, but in other ways it was not. I just couldn't help but think to myself that the people who wrote this did a really poor job of placing certain scenes where they needed to be. For example, take the part where Ratchet goes back to the garage and Grim comes to give Ratchet a pep talk. Then following that scene, Clank comes to get Ratchet back on the team of the Galactic Rangers. If the Clank scene had come before the pep talk, I think that it would have made it more meaningful that Ratchet even had the pep talk with Grim. Now, I don't think that the script is terrible. I think that the script was actually pretty well written. But I think that there could have been a lot of changes made to this movie, but they just didn't notice it in time, or they just didn't care. And when the end credits started, the filmmakers messed up with even that because they introduced the voice cast first, gave us a Marvel movie post-credit scene for the Ratchet and Clank universe before the credits were over, and then introduced the people who did all the behind-the-scenes work to make this movie possible. I mean, how bad of a filmmaker are you if you mess the order of the credits rolling? That's pretty bad. I will say this, though, for the movie Ratchet and Clank. I did think that for an animated movie, the cinematography was actually pretty gorgeous in some scenes that we got to see. I think that the one scene I remember most was the one where Ratchet was sitting out on the I-beam of the mechanic shop and he was looking up into the sky. We, the audience, could see some planets in the sky, and the shot just looked absolutely gorgeous. And there were many other shots throughout this movie that I can't describe in as much detail, but they were just as good. And honestly, there were some really good moments in Ratchet and Clank the movie. But this is a perfect example of a movie that had a lot of things going right, but they got cocky, pulled the trigger too quickly because they thought it was good enough, and now we have yet another failed attempt at making a video game into a movie. Trust me, I wanted to like the Ratchet and Clank movie so badly, and I wanted to give it a good rating here. But honestly, I cannot in my right mind give this movie a good rating no matter how warm my feelings may be towards the video game franchise. Ratchet and Clank gets 2 stars out of 5.